Today, we are going to talk about how to ignite your curiosity because I think it is a skill to be a curious person because this is the secret ingredient to deeper, smarter learning. So today's objectives is to understand why curiosity boosts memory, focus, and motivation, to learn practical tools to intentionally spark curiosity in your studies, to apply curiosity techniques to your study topic, and to walk away with a personal curiosity challenge to boost your engagement this month. So, why does curiosity supercharge learning? First, curiosity activates the brain's reward system, and I'm going to dive into each of these separately. Curiosity also enhances memory retention. Curiosity strengthens our neural connections. You guys know how much I talk about our neural pathways and making sure we get those synapses really firing. And curiosity also reduces perceived effort. So if you're sitting here going, oh, studying is so hard, oh, I don't want to do it, oh, it takes so much effort. When you're curious, that effort actually gets reduced, or the perception at least. So diving into how curiosity activates our brain's reward system. So when we feel curious, our brain actually releases dopamine. And for all of my neurodiverse folks who have anything going on when it comes to abnormalities with dopamine, curiosity is really, really big for us. For those of us who hyper focus and really dive in hard into one single thing, it's because that curiosity of that thing that we're diving into is actually flooding our brain with dopamine. Dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's linked to pleasure and motivation. So this matters because this chemical boost actually keeps us engaged. That's why those of us who hyperfocus, me being one of them, those of us who hyperfocus, we have an immense amount of time or immense amount of ability to be able to sit and focus for, I'm just going to mute you. There we go. For our brain to just sit and focus for hours upon hours. A lot of you know my story. I've thrown my back out because I hyper-focus so hard. Now I have to manage it in a really healthy way. But for those of you who have a hard time focusing, curiosity really helps you keep engaged, and it makes learning feel rather enjoyable rather than forced. You become more motivated to explore, experiment, persist, even when the material is challenging. When you're naturally curious, you're going to be like, why does this happen? Why is that happening? Why does this? And that's when we go down rabbit holes, and we have to be careful going down rabbit holes. That's why we use our note-taking techniques where we write down the rabbit holes we want to go to later, and we do that later after our study block. But this helps us really stay motivated as well. So curiosity literally makes your brain crave learning. So the more curious you can be, the more learning will be enjoyable. It's the same system that rewards you for eating a good meal or achieving a goal. Curiosity turns studying into something your brain wants to do, not just something you have to force yourself to do. So curiosity enhances memory retention. We are all trying to figure out how to get all of that insane amount of knowledge into our brain. This is one way to do it. Be more curious. So studies show when you're curious, you remember information more effectively, even details unrelated to what sparked your initial curiosity. So this matters because being curious creates a heightened state of learning readiness. That means your brain is ready to fire. It's ready to absorb the information that you are going to give it, and it's going to retain the information better as well. Our brain does an encoding process when we are learning and when we are converting information from just something that we're seeing into something that we're processing into something that we're storing as memory. And this helps us improve the way we store that information in our memory. You don't just learn to answer your question. You absorb surrounding information better too. So for anybody who just sat for advanced or MS or is preparing for MW, or any other exams as well, but these tend to be a lot more critical thinking focused exams, the ones I just mentioned. When you can absorb the surrounding information about a topic, it permits your brain to think critically more easily. And so the more curious you can be, not just saying, oh, I need to figure out why or how or whatever the question is, instead of just going, what is the answer? You dive into why is the answer. And the biggest thing when we're trying to engage curiosity and ignite curiosity and be more proficient and build that skill of being curious is there's one really key word, and it's the word why. And this is a word that annoys some people, but I promise you it'll make you so much better of a learner and so much more strong in your exams. My trainer was an incredible trainer. I don't work with him anymore, but every time he would have me do a movement, I would say, why are we doing this? What is this happening? And not because I was being fussy and didn't want to do it. It's because I was really curious on what muscle it was impacting and why he programmed it the way he did, because I really wanted to learn. And for those of us really curious people, sometimes we can be seen as a little bit of annoying, but if being a little annoying means that you do really well on your exams and you have great critical thinking skills and you pass your exams and you reach your goals, then be a little bit annoying. So think of curiosity like a spotlight that brightens everything in the room. When you're curious, your brain is primed to grab and hold on to more information, not just the thing you're focused on, but the little details around it. And those little details around it is really what helps us be more analytical thinkers, more critical thinkers, more deductive thinkers. And it helps us really be able to answer more thoughtful questions rather than just memorizing an answer. Okay, so curiosity strengthens our neural connections. And those of you who worked with me for a long time, you know how much I talk about reprogramming our neural pathways. We can't build new neural, what is the name of those things? We can't build new ones, but we can reroute them. And we can increase our synaptic pathways. And we can increase the way that our brain fires so we can have more access, more easily, readily access to the information that we have stored. So deep engagement through curiosity strengthens the synaptic pathways between related pieces of information. You've probably heard me say more times than you'd like to hear me say it, we need to make information sticky. And the more that we can have these synaptic pathways piecing this information together, the stickier the information is in your brain. When we remember one thing, we memorize one answer to one question, it is much harder for our brain to go grab it. Think of remembering one thing, like one needle sitting on the flat pavement. Especially those of us who have nails, we know how hard it is to pick that one needle up. You have to scooch it over to the crack and then you have to move it so you can get the edge and then you can grab it. It's a pain in the butt. Where if you have more of a stickiness to what you're putting into your brain, you are allowing those synaptic pathways to be stronger. It's like our fingers have magnets on them. And that needle just goes boop right to our fingertips. And it makes it so much easier for us to pull the information out. So the more curiosity you have, the more you strengthen the synaptic pathways, the more sticky the information is, the easier it is for us to pull it out and say it when we need to say it. So this matters because when connections are stronger, recall becomes easier and faster. Those of us who are like, man, I know it, I can't, it's on the tip of my tongue, I'm trying to find it. Okay, hold on, I know this. That's not going to happen. The more curious you are with your questions, it will come out of your brain so much easier and so much faster. You also start to see patterns and relationships between ideas. So we go beyond this place of memorizing an answer to seeing, oh, this affects that, and that affects this, and this is why this, and this is that. And if we move this, then this happens. And okay, this is this, and this is that. And it creates this like storyboard in our brain that makes it so much easier to understand what's truly happening rather than fishing an answer out of a bowl. So learning isn't just about stacking facts. It's about wiring the connections between those facts. It's about making it sticky. Curiosity helps your brain weave information together. So when you need to recall something later, the path is stronger and clearer. Think about going through a forest. When you're trying to memorize something, you're going through the forest and you don't have a machete with you, you don't have a chainsaw, you don't have anything to clear a path. You're climbing over rocks and climbing over branches and tree trunks and everything else, and you're just trying to find your way. Where when you have curiosity, it's like you're clearing a path forward. And that path behind us is so much easier to follow back to grab whatever we need. So we're able to have this be so much easier, so much faster, so much stronger, so much more fluid when we get to our exam. And lastly, curiosity reduces perceived effort. There has been a day in every single one of our lives where we're just like, ugh, I don't want to study today. I don't want to put the effort in today. I don't want to do it today. I just don't want, I don't feel like it. It's too much effort. When we are curious about something, that's when we go into what I like to call a time warp. And this is that hyper-focus realm for some of us who hyper-focus. Otherwise, it's just a time warp where you kind of lose track of time. And I've had this so many times where I come home from work and I'm sitting here, I'm going to sit and study, and it's nighttime, and then I look up and the sun's already coming up, and you're just like, what crap, I didn't sleep. What just happened? But wow, I just learned so much. And it ends up having this thing that seems so hard and so difficult be this really fluid, intriguing situation where you're just sitting there and studying. So when you're genuinely curious, challenges feel like interesting puzzles rather than chores. This matters because curiosity lowers our brain's perception of effort and fatigue, which is great in most cases. We don't want to hyper focus so hard that we forget to sleep and we throw our back out like Jessica has. We want to be cognizant of that and set timers and do the Pomodoro method and all the things that I've taught you all. But it's really helpful when it feels like less of a chore. And it feels like it's easier to stick with these hard or complex tasks than just being completely defeated by studying. You can also sustain focus for longer without feeling drained. Again, there is a fine line to this for those of us neurodiverse individuals. It is important to make sure we're managing when curiosity really starts to flow and hyperfocus really starts to go. It's really important that we are managing that really well. All right, ever notice how time flies when you're absorbed in something fascinating? That's curiosity in action. It turns studying from a grind into an exploration. It helps you push through challenges without hitting a burnout wall. So here are some practical tools to spark curiosity for anybody who's like, I've never had a moment where studying felt easy. I've never had a moment where I hyper focus and I go down these rabbit holes. Like, it's such a challenge for me. It's so hard for me. I know there's so many out there. So here are 4 practical tools to really start to spark your curiosity and build this skill, because I promise you it is a skill. You can build it. The more you practice it, the easier it will become. So the first skill is ask, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if you remove this? What if you change that? What if is an easy way to start the curiosity process. Or why? Why does this work this way? Why does this happen? Why is this occurring? Why does this create that? Why? So two big things to take away. What if and why? Those two simple statements or questions will create the beginning of the ball rolling of the curiosity flow. Find the surprising or weird angle in your topic. I had to do this for those of you who you've heard me say however many times. I didn't like studying Bordeaux. I still really am not a big fan of Bordeaux. And it took me everything to get my hyper focus to ignite when I was studying Bordeaux. It was always a chore. It was always so hard for me. And then finally I said, okay, you know what? There's got to be something about this place that I like. And so I would go in and I would find the angle that was best for me to start to dive into this region. And for me, a lot of you know how much I love rocks. And so for me, the angle that I took to start to enjoy Bordeaux, and the reason why the Bordeaux study guide is the most intense and in-depth study guide I've ever created is because I took it from this different angle. And I took it from the angle of starting with something that I loved, something that I was curious about, something that was engaging and intriguing to me. And I then was able to be so curious about all the rest of the things that it made studying Bordeaux so much easier. Next is turn your material into a mini puzzle or a challenge. Turn it into something where you're trying to find details, trying to understand, trying to uncover a secret, trying to uncover a mystery. And we talked a little bit more about this last masterclass. So if you go back to your recordings, that would be number 7. This is number 8. Number 7, where we talked about how you can be an investigative journalist in studying. That is what you are doing. You're trying to uncover, you're turning this into a puzzle where you're trying to find the pieces and put the pieces together. You're turning it into a challenge. And lastly is teach it to someone else and explore their questions. When you have to teach something, you are harder on yourself about making sure you understand it because we are naturally afraid to be asked a question that we don't know the answer to, which by the way, it is totally okay if you don't know the answer to it. All we have to say is, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find the answer and I'm going to get back to you. And that's just part of the learning process. So when you can build this up, whatever the topic is that you're wanting to study next, build it up into a way that you can teach it to someone else. You also learn so much from the questions that they ask you. And side note, it's really validating when they ask you questions and you do know the answers to them. Sometimes it almost sparks a little bit of surprise in you. You're like, oh, I knew that. Oh, that was exciting. And it makes it more intriguing for you. All right, so you're welcome to take a screenshot of this page. These are some curiosity question prompts to help you dive more into curiosity, to help you build curiosity as a skill, to help you increase your deductive process, to increase your critical thinking, to increase your analytical skills. So I put these into 3 separate categories. Big picture questions. That would be, why does this matter? How does this connect to what I already know? What is the bigger story or system behind this? Who benefits or is impacted by this? These are big picture questions that can start sparking curiosity. Then we have the what, if, why, how questions. These are the questions where it causes us to dive even deeper. It causes us to piece together the puzzle. So what if this worked differently? What if you moved this? What if you changed that? What if you added or removed a variable? What was it designed? Why was it designed this way? How does this change if X, Y, and Z? What's the real reason this happens beyond the obvious? Why, thinking about winemaking, why are we pressing the skins away from the juice? Why is there 3 separate ways to make rosé? Why would we have carbonic fermentation be a thing? Carbonic maceration be a thing? Diving into the whys, the what ifs, the hows will really help you create your study experience in a curious way that turns it into a puzzle, turns it into this exciting thing where you're trying to like uncover the mystery. And then some questions to check in with self. How would I explain this to someone with no background in the subject? Can you dumb it down, for lack of a better way of saying that, to someone who has zero knowledge? What's something surprising or unexpected here? Usually when we get surprised or something is unexpected, we dive into it a little bit more. So if you're like, oh, this is boring, ask yourself, what is surprising? What is unexpected? Try to find that angle like I did with Bordeaux. Try to find the angle that helps you dive deeper. Where can I dig deeper to go beyond surface level understanding? If someone were to ask you a more in-depth question, what would you need to know to answer it? How can you dig deeper? How can you be more curious? So again, you can take a screenshot of this if you didn't do that already. I'll wait for just a second. And these are great questions to have. You can just line them up, print this picture out, put it on your screen, put it on your study materials, put it on your notebook, and have this be a constant reminder of ways to spark curiosity. All right, so how do we apply this to our study routine? First is use curiosity when reviewing your notes. You can do this when you're going through. You guys know how much I talk about only having your notes on one page of the paper. We only use one side. So when we go through and review our notes, when we're on the side that doesn't have the information, we can say, what's missing? What's the bigger picture? Why is this happening? What if this changes? How does this work? You can do this with your flashcards as well. I don't have flashcards next to me, but you can have on the back or the front, whichever way you function with flashcards. You can have why, what if, how. So it helps your brain remember to think critically when you hear that question rather than just say the answer that's on the back. And then stay engaged by tracking interesting questions, not just correct answers. And interesting questions cause us to dive deeper. So how can you rewrite practice exams? How can you rewrite flashcards? How can you rewrite the way you take notes? So you are constantly prompting your brain to say, ooh, why this? Ooh, what about that? Ooh, how does this impact? Ooh, what's going on here? And it makes this spiral happen. So how can you take away today one thing to start applying this to your study routine? I am now going to give you a challenge. This is your curiosity challenge for the month of May. I want you to choose one subject this month to approach with fresh curiosity. This can be a subject that you have been having trouble getting into, like I did with Bordeaux. A area or a topic where you're just like, I don't like studying that. You can do it with this and see if it helps you decide you actually do enjoy studying that. Or if you're like, oh, I don't know, then you can do it with a place that you love, your favorite place to study. And so I want you to write down 5 questions you are genuinely curious about with this one topic. So for me with Bordeaux, the way I approached that was, which rocks are where? Why are these rocks in these different places? How does these rocks in these different places affect the way that we are planting vines in each individual area? How are those rocks impacting the final wine? Meaning we have to put grapes on these grapes on these rocks, these grapes in this place because it's close to the river, it's far away, whatever the case it is. And then why does the final wine taste the way it does? Those are just some simple questions that I asked myself to really start to engage with Bordeaux, because it was such a struggle for me. It was very, very difficult for me. I'm not a Bordeaux fan. Not because it's not great or the wines aren't good or anything along those lines. It's just, for whatever, it just doesn't resonate with me. And so that's how I went from having my Bordeaux study guide be like pretty minimum to being the most in-depth study guide that you'll see on my entire resource page. Once you've done this, watch how it shifts your engagement. See how it changes the way you approach that region. So for those of you who are live with me in the moment, put into the chat, which subject are you choosing today? Which subject are you approaching with this new found curiosity? Which subject are you asking yourself 5 genuine curiosity questions about?